so this is Moroccan Bazaar. It's featuring Moroccan Red from Henry Glass, which is just a really fun red, black, and white graphics line. So these are the prints. This is not the whole collection, but these are the prints that I'm using in our quilt. Love this one. Oh, and this one. So we're gonna go ahead, get everything cut. Oh, this isn't in the front, this is in the back. We're gonna get everything cut and ready to go, and then I'm gonna walk you through how to do the 2 different blocks in this quilt. So I've got all my straight cuts done. Now I'm going to cut my pieces for template 1, 2, and 3, and I wanna show you how to do that. There are templates in the pattern, and you can cut those out and use those paper templates to do the blocks, to cut these pieces, which is right here. If you do print this from a digital download, make sure that 1-inch square is exactly 1 inch and not just slightly smaller. If it is not, then you need to reprint it and make sure that your printer settings are to actual size and not fit to page. So you could take these, you'd cut these pieces of paper out, lay them on the fabric, and use the edge of a ruler to cut the pieces. Or you could use a 2 peaks in 1 ruler. This is a ruler from Creative Grids. And I like to use this one whenever I'm cutting these shapes. There's also a ruler called a Tri-Rex ruler, similar sizes, or similar. It is the exact same triangle sizes, it's just laid out and the directions are a little different. So if you get a pattern like this and you don't know which size strips you need to cut your templates, I just take the ruler and I lay it on the drawing from top to bottom. And on Creative Grid rulers, the black circle number is your finish size, the red white number is your cut size. So by laying this on here, it lines up. I need 5.5 inch strips to cut templates 1, 2, and 3. So I've already done that for each of the fabrics we need. And so going back to the cutting, this is fabric B, and I need to cut let's see here, I need to cut 48 of them, and you get 12 from a strip. I've already done the math for you. So if I need 48 and you get 12 from a strip, we need 4 strips that are 5.5 inch wide, which is what I've got here. If you're new to cutting, don't stack them up, cut them one at a time. If you have some experience with cutting, then you can stack them up however high you feel comfortable that you will still get an accurate cut. Then you take the ruler, so these are template 2s. Template 2s are using this side. Let me get a board here. They are using this side of the ruler. Template 1 and 3 is using this side. So we need to use this side on these fabrics. So I align the 5.5 inch line with the bottom of the strip stack, the top of the ruler with the top of the strip stack. And I go ahead and I cut. The first one you have to cut both sides. So there is template 2s, and I had 4 strips, so that's 2, 4, 8 pieces. So I need to cut 6 of those. So there's 6 times 8 is 48, so those are all cut. These are the template 2s. And then for the fabric E, it is also template 2s, but we need 52 of them. So now we have 5 strips. And 5 is my max. I don't cut any higher than 5. And even that can be asking for some trouble, but again, we do a lot of quilts here. Hundreds of them a year, so I have learned this as a trick for time saving. So just make sure both edges are lined up, make sure you have a sharp blade, and then you go ahead and again both cuts on the first one. And if you don't cut all the way through, that's kind of what happens when you do a lot. So that's a warning. Alright, so there's 10. right, now we need to cut templates 1 and 3. 1 and 3 are mirror image of each other. So you have to cut, if you cut your fabric off of a yardage, it's right sides together. So if you go ahead and you cut template 1 using the ruler, again lining everything up. There is also a notch at the top. You want to take that notch out. And then you slide the shape down to where it says baseline on the ruler. And the directions for these Creative Grid rulers are excellent, and they come with the ruler, or you can get them online if you lose them. But you take it down to the baseline and you align the triangle with the baseline and this edge, and you cut a notch there. So you have a notch, notch, flat, 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 angled. So this, by cutting it that way, I now have template 1 and template 3. I have a mirror image of it. So if you cut it folded like this, you don't have to cut all the template 1s separate from all the template 3s. You're cutting one of each at the same time. You still need 100 of these and 100 of these though. So, and to do that, you need 10 5.5-inch strips to get it. Now, for the template 1s and 3s with all of the excess, with all the extra notches and everything, I don't cut a bunch of stacks, only template 2s, because there's not a lot of cutting to it. So these we're just gonna cut 1 or 2 strips up. So again, this time we're gonna flip the ruler, cut the straight, cut the notch, slide it to the baseline, and cut the second notch. Okay, so we only need to cut 100 of template 1s and 100 of template 2s, and we'll have everything cut for the pattern. So that is not true. I have to cut half square triangles yet. So that is how you cut template 1, 2, and 3. Now, to cut half square triangles, the pattern has you cut 5 7/8 inch squares and has you do it the traditional method. This is how we write all our patterns. You don't need any special rulers or anything to go with it. I'm going to show you in the video another way to do half square triangles. And that is with this Creative Grids ruler. Both these rulers I'll put a link below for, we have them on our website. But this Creative Grid ruler is called the non-slip multi-size 6-inch Flying Geese 45 90-degree triangle ruler. It is a mouthful. For half square triangles, we're going to use this side of the ruler. This ruler will do half square triangles, quarter square triangles, flying geese, square and a square. It's a very versatile ruler. I use it for a lot of different things. If you've watched any of our other videos, you know you've seen that ruler before. So, to do my half square triangles, first what I need to do is look in the pattern and see what fabrics go together. So I have 3 colors. I have red, white, and black. And it looks like the red and the black each go with the white. So to cut half square triangles, I'll take 1 white, and 1 red, and I put them right sides together, and I will take this over to the iron and press it, and the two layers will stick together a whole lot better by pressing them so they don't slide while I'm trying to cut them. So now that I have them right sides together, we know we need a 5-inch finish half square triangle, because I was having you cut 5 7/8 for the traditional. You take the 7/8 away for traditional and you end up with 5. That's what we need for finish. So if you look at this ruler and go to the 5-inch finish, your strip is 5.5, which is what we've got cut. You lay the 5.5-inch line on the bottom of the fabric, align the top of the fabric with the strip, and like again, the first one you have to cut both sides. Now, I have these ready to sew. We're going to go from end to end, and they're already layered up, so I don't have to match them up, and they are cut and matched perfectly. That is another method for doing half square triangles on top of the traditional method, which is in the pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these. We need to have, now when you cut 5 7/8 squares, you're getting 2 triangle units per square. So what you do is you just flip to the illustration. It says you need to make 52 half square triangles. So we need to actually cut 52 of these because each is 1 unit versus the square where you're getting 2 units. So I'm going to cut 52 of these, and then I need for the black, I'm going to cut 48 of black and white. And then we will have everything cut for the quilt, and we can move on to piecing the blocks. So the pattern tells you to cut 5 7/8 blocks for your half square triangles. In the earlier part of the video, I showed you how I cut everything using my Pac-Man ruler, or the Creative Grid non-slip multi-size 6-inch flying geese and 45/90 triangle ruler, either one. But I want to show you how to do both types of half square triangles depending on which way you decide to go. So when you do a traditional half square triangle, you draw a line from corner to corner across one diagonal, and you sew a 1/4 inch away from each side. And that is how we've written the pattern, and that is the traditional way to do it. However, I like to do it a different way to be a little more accurate, but it requires a ruler. And I don't want to make somebody buy a ruler that they may not want. So we write the directions as if you don't need a ruler, and then here I'm going to show you how I do it with this ruler. I line up, there is a 1/4 inch printed line on the ruler, and I line that printed line up with the edge of my square, with the bottom of my square, and then that diagonal printed line goes from corner to corner. So now I'm aligning 1, 2, 3 complete lines versus 2 points. And your line's going to be much more accurate. So once you have it in position, you draw your first line. This is now your sewing line. You turn the whole thing over and you repeat. And then this is your second sewing line. So where the traditional method is you draw one line and sew a 1/4 inch away, the ruler method, you draw your sewing lines. So I'm going to sew right on those lines, and then once they're sewn, you would just take a rotary cutter, cut this in half, and that would give you two half square triangles from the squares. So that is the traditional method with a twist, and that's how you can do it following the pattern. Now if you've cut them following the cutting directions using this ruler in the video, you would just have this already cut, and you would sew your 1/4 inch seam like I've sewn here, and then you're ready to press them open. And to press it open, you just I press these towards the dark. And how I do it is I use the side edge of my iron and I push into that seam to make sure no excess fabric gets rolled in, and I give it a good press. I don't go push the iron out to the edges because you can distort your square. And then you'll have a dog ear, and you will want to cut that to get rid of it. And there is your half square triangle. Now the next step for these, you will need to make 48 of these, which is fabric F and fabric C, and you will need to make 52 that are fabric F and fabric D, which is red. And once you have all of your half square triangles sewn, then we're going to do a flip and sew on the corners. And here is the fabric FD combo. And we're going to do a flip and sew of C in the corner. And this is the FC combo, and it gets another F square down in the corner. So now we're going to show you another thing here. So when you go to mark a square for flip and sew, which is you sew from diagonal to diagonal and you flip it open, that's why it's called that. You usually, again, would take a ruler and mark from corner to corner. And for the same reason the half square triangles, this is just 2 arbitrary corners. There's nothing else you're aligning, and so when you draw that line, it is not always accurate. So again, I use the same method to mark my flip and sew as I did the half square triangle. I'm using the dotted line on the ruler. I'm aligning the side with the dotted line, the bottom of the square with the dotted line, and then the diagonal with the dotted line. and then I draw my line. Now when I go to put this on my square, there are two triangles, a big one and a little one. The little one always points out. You align the two squares, and then you're going to sew from corner to corner, and your 1/4 inch foot goes on the drawn line. So it looks like this. And I'll flip that over so you can see it went from corner to corner. I've already cut away the excess. Corner to corner, my drawn line was here, and it flips open. So then once I have that done, that's the same square, so we don't need to do that. So I need to sew those. So once I have that done, then I would move on and do the same thing with this square, this half square triangle, and the black fabric C squares. And you will need 52 of those, and you will need 48 of these. And the red goes in, this one's for block 1 and this one is for block 2. So once you have all of those done, you're ready to move on to units 5 and 6. And how we do those is these are the template 1, 2, and 3 pieces that we cut to start with. And you have already cut your notches if you've used the ruler. And if you do use the notches on the ruler, which is above and beyond the templates in the pattern, you can align the notch with the top and with the bottom. And that's why I like this ruler over paper templates. And then you would sew your 1/4 inch seam. Now, if you were using the paper templates that come with the pattern, what I did is I used some rubber cement and I rubber cemented the template onto template plastic. That gives me a little more rigid template. And you can do it 2 different ways. This is cut right on the drawn lines with the seam allowance on the inside. But I've also learned that if you happen to slip, you can cut your paper template. And then you're like, I gotta start all over, make a copy. So what I started doing is cutting the template without the seam allowance. And then when I put it on the template plastic, I add the seam allowance back in. That way if I mess up and cut this plastic, I can just peel this off and glue it to another piece of plastic and start over. You would cut the fabrics the same with these as you did the ruler. You just don't have the notch at the bottom and you don't have the notch at the top. So it's not quite as accurate as the, it's accurate. It's just a little bit harder to align your pieces using the paper templates versus using a specialty ruler, which is why the ruler, the 2 peaks in 1 ruler is such a good tool to have, especially if you do a lot of our patterns. I use it a lot. And I will put the link below for both of those rulers. So once you have this lined up, you're going to go ahead and sew, which is right here. You sew 1/4 inch away. You will have a little red dog ear there. Leave it alone. Don't cut it off. And then you press this towards the background. I find these squares work much better when pressed towards the background than when you press it towards the darker fabric. It causes a lot of bulk up here at the point. So even if it's a lighter fabric, I press out. So once you have that one done, you take your next piece, your template, in this case your template 1. I started with 3 and I'm doing 1. Does not matter. You can start with 1, do 3, you can do half with 1, half with 3. This diagonal at the top is caught in the seam, so you're not going to see it, so it really doesn't matter. So we go ahead and we align the template 1 piece, and then I would rotate this, and I would sew from this end to this end. And then once you have that done, you would press this out to the background. And again, I just put the side of the iron into the seam. I don't go all the way out to the edges. And this is unit 6. And you would make a unit 5 as well, which is this fabric with 1, 2, and 3. And then on both of these, we're gonna do the same flip and sew we did up here with fabric D. And we're going to do it in both corners. So we have that there, these out of the way. So you would sew them on the corners just like we talked about before. So I marked it. I marked my seam allowance, I sewed a 1/4 inch away from my seam allowance, and now I have it flipped open. You can see how it matches perfectly. So then I can trim away this excess fabric back here. Same thing on this side. And then we're gonna go ahead and press these small triangles out. There we go. And that becomes unit, I believe this is unit 8. You need to make 48 of those. In this, same thing, we're using a different fabric here. We're using fabric E here. And then you have unit or template 1, 2, and 3, and then we would do flip and sew with the fabric D squares. And this one you need to make 52 of. Okay, so then once you have all of your units sewn, we're going to lay them out into the blocks. Here is block 1 laid out, ready to sew, and you're going to sew 1, 2, 3 together, 1, 2, 3 together, 1, 2, 3 together, and I'm going to come back and show you how to press that. And then here is block 2. Same thing, I'm going to sew these 3 into a row, these 3 into a row, these 3 into a row, and then the rows together. And I will show you how to press that one. So first is to do the units, then we have the blocks. So I'll be back when I get these sewn into rows and show you how to press them. Okay, so we have all our units sewn into strips for block 1. They look like this. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna press these towards the center, these out, and these out. So just make sure you lay it flat on the board. Flip open the side you want to press, use the edge of the iron, and press. You notice I just keep the iron in the seam, I don't pull it out to the edges. So there's the top, the middle goes towards the center, that's the center, and then this is the bottom. Okay, so now when you go to sew these together, these seams will nest because these went in and those went out. So you sew the 3 rows together to make the block. And then once you have the block done, for this one, for block 1, it naturally wants to go this way and this way. So we're going to press the top and bottom rows towards the center. So there's block 1, and you need to make 13 of these. Now for block 2, it's the same scenario for pressing the rows. I'm going to press the middle towards the center and the 2 sides out. Okay, so there's the top, the middle, the bottom, and again, these will nest when you sew them together. And that's for block 2. And then once you have block 2 sewn together, now we're going to press these seams, this one out and this one up and this one down. And that way when we go to sew block 1 and 2 together, they'll nest on the sides. Okay, there's block 2. So we need to make 12 of these, and then we're going to sew them all together into rows of 5 blocks in a row, and you do 5 rows. So we're ready to sew our Moroccan Bazaar blocks together, and this is block 1, and it doesn't matter if it sews in this way or if it's sewn in this way. This is block 2, and it goes this way where the black is pointing towards the red and not this way where the white is pointing towards the red. I just want to point out that this block does have a direction to it, and so if you're looking at the horizontal rows, the black goes this way in the horizontal rows. So you would just sew this guy on like this and then continue on. So that is it's very, very subtle. It's kind of hard to see some of it, and I don't want you to miss it because then you have to rip all your rows to get the secondary pattern to work. So again, the black goes towards the side triangles, and then the white goes towards the top and bottom triangles. So just a quick tip before you sew your rows together. So here it is, our Moroccan Bazaar back from Monica. So let's zoom in and see the design that Monica quilted on this quilt. You can see it's a Mexican tile quilt pattern, I believe, but it ties in with the fact that this quilt was inspired by some Moroccan tile photos a cousin took and sent us. Very excited to get this one done. This is featuring Moroccan Red from Henry Glass Studios. I did teach a Zoom class on this, and I'm going to offer another Zoom class in the future if you're interested. But very fun, very easy to do. We used the 2 peaks and 1 ruler from Creative Grids, and it was just, I love the secondary pattern you get by sewing the 2 star blocks together. You can create a lot of secondary patterns if you just look at different blocks and how they end in the corners. So this one had a half square triangle, that one has a half square triangle. By matching those 2, it creates this secondary ring. So I hope you've enjoyed our tutorial on how to make these 2 star blocks. And please let me know if you make this quilt in the future. Post your comments and pictures below. I'd love to see them. And if you've enjoyed our tutorial, make sure you like and subscribe, and thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, make sure you like and subscribe below. You can find the Whimsical Workshop on our website, thewhimsicalworkshop.com, and that has all links to all of our other social media platforms. Thanks for joining us.